Here we go.
I'll call the Wednesday, June 22nd meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Staff, please call roll.
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Angela Davis.
Here.
Mr. Fontaine.
Here.
I can't call you this. Chris Henderson.
Here.
Thank you. Connie Miley. She's here. I got you, Connie.
You're on mute, Connie.
Mark Zort.
Here.
Larry Reed.
Yep.
Jim Bisbee is excused. Alder Thomas is here.
Here. Okay. I'll entertain a motion on the minutes from May 25th.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are any additions or corrections?
I had a, oh, sorry. Thank you. Number 8, the updates and discussion on DEI initiative efforts. I believe we had a conversation. Did we or did we not? And that's the question.
I can review from the video.
Okay, I just don't recall. It'd be helpful if we should notate if we talked about something. I don't know if you talked about the Chiefs Roundtable or
Yeah.
events. I don't recall, and I didn't bring my notes. I was on the move, so I don't recall what that is, but we should probably keep a record of it.
I wrote these notes myself, but that's not to say that I missed something. So I will review the footage.
Okay, and if not, just no update this month, just so we know.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments, additions, corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, minutes are approved.
Aye.
There's nothing under, no appearances, nothing under street safety for cars, bikes, or pedestrians that I'm aware of, Chief, anything?
No.
Nothing there. We'll move to item 6, new business. Discussion on future grant opportunities for fire EMS. Chief McMullen?
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody. I'm calling from Green Bay tonight. I am going to be brief. I have a group meeting at 6:30, so I'm going to try and be very brief here. I just wanted to make sure you're all up to speed on the multitude of grants that we have available on the EMS side. State of Wisconsin just issued an EMS Flex Grant opportunity, which opened up last week. We have until the 11th to write it. 5 different categories, from training to equipment to supplies, recruitment and retention, vehicles, anything and everything that we may have struggled with or are having struggles with due to COVID is their goal with this grant program. Anybody that's on the state funding assistance program who's eligible for that is eligible to write. I'll be very upfront. We're going to write all 5 categories because they can't give you the money unless you ask for it. So we have anything from the bike team to the drone project we're working on, to I have a recruitment and retention program for our volunteers that I'm working on, a new monitor for the new ambulance in 24 to try and save city money in that particular respect. We have a bunch of stuff under the training line item that we're going to be writing for. So we're going to also, let me rephrase that. We also are going to write for $50,000 towards the new ambulance that we're currently pursuing. Just to due to the cost increases due to COVID and the supply chain shortages, it's a very valid thing to write for. I'm not going to try and write for $200,000 like I've already heard several of my peers say, oh, we can just write $200,000 for a new ambulance and they'll give us money. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be quite that easy. But the cost increases we're aware of due to the supply chain shortages and COVID, I'm going to write for that amount to try and offset our costs at the city as well. There's no match. There's no action needing to be taken by the Public Safety Committee or the council for this grant. I just want you to be aware of it because I know nobody likes surprises. There's also a half a dozen other grants in that same boat that we're going to be looking at, from Walmart to Alliant Energies to We Energies to Enbridge to TC Pipelines. There's a good half a dozen of them out there. Firehouse Subs will be writing for again as of July 1st, basically to try and fund all these programs that we want without costing the city any taxpayer dollars. So that's my goal going into it with all these grants. And yes, sir.
Jerry, how much is in that EMS grant?
$12 million.
And that's for the state of Wisconsin?
Correct. State of Wisconsin only. I reached out to Ella at the state to ask what her thoughts were on how many would apply. Out of the 800 some EMS agencies in the state, only about half take advantage of funding assistance, which is free money. So that's what they're estimating, is only about half the agencies are going to write grants. So we're among about 400 agencies writing for that 12 million.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's all I've got. I'm happy to take any other questions. I just want to make sure you're all aware and up to speed of the grants that I'm pursuing that don't require any specific action. I just want to make sure that people are aware that I'm writing them, and I don't surprise everybody at the council with a grant that we got awarded. So.
Thank you. Any questions?
Chief, did you say July 11th was the deadline?
Yes.
That's really coming up fast. Good, it's a lot of work to do. That's wonderful.
Well, what I will say, and I'm one of the last ones to defend the state usually because they probably put more hurdles up in front of everything more than the private sector. In this case, it's literally a single page grant
Oh,
application.
okay.
Very straightforward,
Nice.
very simple, very few reporting requirements. Their goal is actually to award grants by August 1st and have it dispersed by September 1st.
Okay.
For a state program is unheard of. So
Okay, we'll move to item 6B, discussion on funding assistance program.
yeah, I also wanted to make sure you're aware of this. I know in the past, funding assistance dollars don't necessarily come to public safety. It's approved by the council. But again, I'd like to make sure everybody's in the loop. So as part of that same package, it gave us a $12 million grant. We're getting a one-time triple benefit from the funding assistance program. So what that is money that the state gives out every year to any eligible EMS agency. You can apply for it. It's based on your population in an arcane formula that probably came from the 50s. But our allocation, there's two buckets of money, one for training EMTs and one for equipment purchases. Up until last year, we were just getting the money for equipment purchases. The training is based on the number of basics you have on your department times your population times a modifier. And so as of last year, we got $3,000 for basic training and we got $4,000 for equipment. Currently in our account for FAP, we've got $17,000, which can be used for equipment purchases. The training is restricted to basics or emergency medical first responders, so the very lowest level of medical training, unless you don't use it in that year. Once you keep it and roll it over, we can use it for training anybody. It can be advanced, it can be paramedic, it can be any type of EMS training at all. But with this new triple benefit, we're looking at getting roughly $9,000 for the training side and about $12,000 for the equipment side. And to give you an idea of what that's been spent on, we just bought powered stair chairs for the ambulances. We bought one. The funding assistance program paid for the other one. We've used it to help update our video laryngoscope program. The stores are expensive. We use that to purchase the first one. EMS fund balance bought the second one and the training one. So we can use it for any equipment purchase. It just can't supplant budget money. So we may be able to use some of that to help equip the new ambulance as well as it comes. There'll be money in there to be able to do that because it's not supplanting budget money. So just wanted you to be aware, again, the state tripled that program this year, plus our population climbed. So I estimate we'll get about $24,000 split between training and equipment. So again, happy to take questions on that as well. I just wanted you to be aware it's coming and very soon here. They're actually expediting that as well.
I just had a question about equipment because I thought I saw this on Facebook where the fire department is buying more sustainable equipment.
Absolutely. So we actually, as part of the capital budget, we had money set aside for upgrading engine 4, to buying the small equipment on it. So I've been working with vendors and got a good enough deal that we could actually update the engine, the ladder and engine 4 and remove all the 2-cycle gas engines off of our vehicles. They're some of the most polluting engines out there, not to mention the most difficult to start, and they're expensive to maintain. So we've actually replaced the gas-powered blowers on all 3 vehicles. We've replaced the gas-powered chainsaws on all 3 vehicles. The K12, which is one of the most, Larry, you know, the K12 saw. It's heavy, it's hard to start, it's hard to carry. This battery operated one weighs about 20 pounds less and it's instant on. They're fabulous pieces of equipment. The goal is also to remove the battery power or the gas powered fans on the engines. I have 2 of those on order. So in doing some bulk purchasing, we were able to fit all of that within the engine for dollar amount, as well as removing the 2-cycle gas engine that drives our hydraulic extrication equipment on engine 4. All that's going away. Everything will be battery powered. It's all the same batteries. So the sustainability is a really big bonus of that. It's also way easier for us to teach new people how to use equipment.
It would be good, there's a part on the council agenda where they talk about sustainability
Right.
practices. You could report on that
I would be happy to.
to the council. That'd be good. Thank you.
May I forbear on the committee? I'd love to give my report. I just don't want to run out of time and be kidnapped by a whole
Go ahead.
hassle of people knocking on my door.
Go ahead.
Report wise, everything's going great. We have all of the 12 new volunteers. We still have 11 of them, which is fantastic. They're putting in a ton of hours. Our storm response on last Monday, props to our police department, our public works department, and the rest of the city, by the way. It was fantastic seeing everybody out there immediately after the storm, helping to clean everybody else's yards and stuff. It was fantastic. We ended up between Monday and Wednesday, I think 47 calls for service that were storm related. I had 15 volunteers there Wednesday night right after the storms, which was, we had every truck in the fleet out in the city for 6 hours, helping the police department, helping public works. I can't speak highly enough of our folks. We had, again, we had so many volunteers respond. It was fantastic. It was a long night for everybody, but overall, the city did fabulous. Not just city employees or volunteers. Like I say, watching everybody in the different neighborhoods was awesome. I will say, I wish we could have helped more. I got asked several times if we could break the chainsaws out and help start cutting up branches, which we can't do when there's wires involved. We would love to do that, but so again, our storm response was fantastic. I think that's the bulk of my report this month. We're busy, high level calls. We're going to exceed probably 90 EMS calls again this month. So and that's just EMS, not fire calls. Fire calls, unfortunately, will be a blip on the radar when you see it come through on the June report. It'll look, oh my gosh, we had like 80 fire calls, but 47 of those were storm related. So other than that, I just want to say thank you to everybody here, because it was makes me really understand why I took this job 18 months ago. I'm having a fabulous time. So that's what I've got for a report.
We were in Maple Bluff at our daughter's house, and that same storm hit Maple Bluff, caused comparable damage, and we saw the same thing there. Their police, their fire, their public works, neighbor to neighbor. We left about 4 hours after the thing came through and couldn't believe how much down timber was already cut and piled at the curb. And the village announced, that we'll be having extended pickup. And we went there the next day, and there were tree service people grinding stuff already. Great.
One of the first people I saw was Chief Austin, and that was wonderful. And if anyone needs any firewood, visit McKenna Road.
We got
I
plenty, thanks.
spent all day Saturday holding a chainsaw, so it felt kind of tough. I like those.
I'd just like to reinforce the thanks to the fire department. To our neighbor on Winnequa Trail was one of the more serious situations. And both they got flagged down and helped right away. I know there was some follow-up with people coming and checking on the stability of the house throughout the next couple of days. And I know the family has communicated that to us across the street, but I don't know if they've communicated it to you. So wanted to make sure that got passed along, that they really appreciate both.
We had a wonderful conversation. So really good group of people. So
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna sign off then. So you folks all have a good evening. So thank you for being patient and letting me go ahead of schedule. So.
I'm going to interrupt for a minute. In the interest of being accurate, I'm looking at your shirt and I'm seeing Chief Brian Cheney. So I want you all to know, I believe the chief has had a name change.
Yes.
And I misspoke just
It-
now.
quite all right.
That's exactly what
It's-
went through my mind.
Listen, I've signed off BCA since
Yeah.
my legal name change a few times. It'll take me a while after many, many years. So a legal name change to Brian Cheney, which is my birth name, Brian Matthew. My mom wants to make sure I insert my middle name there. So Brian Matthew Cheney, a very Catholic mom lover. It's public, it's due to a divorce, but it's all, everyone's happy. So,
That's good.
yes,
So I just
thank you.
didn't know if you said, if you know.
I didn't mention it to the public safety, so thanks for bringing that up. So
Yep.
Cheney, it's a lot easier to remember.
Yes,
Have a good night, you all.
Thanks. Judy.
Bye.
before Christ.
That too, that's what my mom reminds me of.
Okay, we'll move to item C, discussion action on revisions in Monona police policy regarding body worn cameras. Chief Cheney.
Thank you. Yes, so you're becoming veterans at this. This is a Lexipol policy as recommended with some changes. I'll go through sort of some of these changes. I've asked our subject matter expert in this field, Assistant Chief Duman, to log on to today's meeting. So she's here in case there are some technical questions that we can answer for you. And then as always, our operations lieutenant, Kurt Weigel, is signed on as well. So some changes to the nomenclature. Again, this policy is written for all agencies, small and large. So you'll see some terminology in there that is seemingly meant for larger agencies that have divisions and sections, which we don't necessarily, but the function is important and is relevant to what we do. So changes such as, changing administrator or technician to administrator, et cetera. But also it's important to know that with this policy and the policy that we're going to review here subsequent to this, they're both implemented as Lexipol policies with the understanding that some agencies don't have both like we do. So we have both squad, or what are we talking about first? The body worn. So we have the
portable audio recorders.
Yes, the portable audio video recorders as well as the squad. So we have the body worn camera and the squad camera and equipment as well. The policies are written for standalone, right? They're both in there. So we had to do some tweaking with both policies because we don't require the redundancies. For example, we don't require that officers, because we require them to have a body worn camera. They have it on them all the time. It's equipped, it's downloadable immediately, et cetera. We don't then also require them to have another piece of equipment, a microphone that they have for the car. When everything's being captured on their chest or wherever they carry it, the body worn camera. So that's why you'll see some entire sections were crossed out because it was redundancy, and it's something that our officers currently don't do with current policy. And again, it was done so because these policies are designed for in case agencies have one or the other, and not necessarily both. We just so happen to have both, which is becoming the trend. Most agencies are moving to body worn and in-car video. Okay. So with, and you'll see some of the technical glitches as well with some of the editing here. It's just, again, their program and software that isn't Windows. So you'll see, for example, if we're looking at the portable audio video recordings on the second page of that, where it's under member responsibilities, number one, I did catch there was spelled wrong, so I will be addressing that. Yes, thank you. And if there are any others like that, please let me know. But striking the whole section under when using a portable recorder, the assigned member shall record his or her name. To let you know why that's removed is because the device is already pre-designated to the officer, the assigned officer, myself, and so that second sentence in there that says it's not required when the recording device and related software captures the user. We just decided to strike it. It doesn't apply to us, so strike it. And that's what our representative also said was fine, the lexical representative. So it doesn't apply to you because the technology is such that you don't need it or it doesn't exist, then remove it. Otherwise, it's just confusing.
So each officer has their own camera, which is assigned only to them. So there's no way it could be,
Yeah, individually assigned.
Okay.
And so it's programmed in the system as such
Got it.
that when you download the information, it knows
Got it.
who is assigned to that. And we can change assignments around.
Sure.
and-
Yeah.
What happens when we start getting part-time officers?
We will do a generic assignment for them. And so that might be an opportunity in which our administrator of the body worn cameras will have to assign them out, the body worn camera. But the likelihood of us having 6 part-time officers working at a time, I will bet a paycheck. Hold me to that. It's probably not going to happen. So we have methods in place that if they're assigned the body worn camera, then it'll be documented as such. So Sarah, any other input on that particular piece? Or Assistant Chief Duman, I should say.
That's okay. No, that's absolutely correct with assigning those. And we do have a couple now that are like a general assignment, just in case we would have a battery issue or some other malfunction. So we have that backup as well.
Thank you. There's some really good policy language that's in here that wasn't necessarily in previous language. Things such as, things we have to worry about for safety, like, explosive device, right? We're trained to turn off our portable radios, also think about the potential of your body worn camera transmitting, radio waves that can trigger a device. It's the horrible, but great world we live in that we have to think about those things. So it's Lexipol that brings those sort of best practice policies into place, which we really appreciate. Everything else is very standardized language. And as I mentioned in previous meetings about Lexipol and why we invested in them, all of this has been vetted. All of this is based on, accredited law enforcement agency best practice, based on best practice industry-wide, based on the former president's 21st century policing, or his administration, I should say, which is the last time that had been done in reviewing best practices for law enforcement on a national level. Obviously, the state laws and federal law is applied in here as well, and I tried to give you the copy that indicated which, and anytime that it's important to indicate statute or case law, I'm sorry, the supporting statute, it should be indicated in, yes, it is, throughout the policy.
Any questions, comments?
I have a question about the administrator. Is that, I just know somebody who else, a former retired guy that took a job with a smaller department in Illinois, and he took charge of their body worn cameras and vehicle video, and it was an extremely time consuming endeavor. I'm just kind of curious, is this something that's going to be added to somebody's responsibilities, or is there somebody that's going to be able to I don't know if you have a new hire or something like that, but how is this going to work with just the day-to-day operation of this stuff to make sure the stuff gets downloaded, saved, there's requests, going to make the recording, who's going to make sure that things are deleted after 120 days, all those types of things.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Mark. And Mark and I came from an agency where we didn't have body worn cameras. We had in-car video cameras, and that was an entire section of the police department that dealt with releasing those records and retaining them and making sure they're preserved. We have the great and wonderful Assistant Chief Sarah Duman, who I would prefer do other police commander jobs and assignments. we're getting to the point, folks, where we're going to be asking for some support. The fire department, Jerry's not on here, but Jerry, fire departments are starting to utilize in-unit camera systems as well. They are arson investigators and they have a duty to preserve evidence and record evidence as well. Ideally, we would love an IT person or a technical evidence technician or somebody who can support, this program ongoing, because as we grow, as we collect more data, as there's more demand on the police departments for open records requests, which Assistant Chief Duman also handles for the police department, we're going to run out of capacity. And we have a duty to have a reasonable turnaround with these requests. We have a duty to preserve the evidence and the integrity of the evidence as best we can. And frankly, I have a promoted position as an assistant chief who is, I tell Sarah this all the time, she's our Jack and Jill of all trades and wears many hats. But frankly, there's other things that I need our assistant chief of police to be doing as well. So Mark, you bring up a good point. We already do it now, but it is extremely taxing, extremely time consuming, and is not conducive for the health and welfare of our assistant chief or anybody who has to do that job on top of all the other duties that we assign. So one of the things I'm learning about working for a smaller agency now is that we all wear many hats. And that's fine when you don't have Walmart. That's fine when you don't have, all the crashes on the Beltline and the calls for service that we do. I think we've sort of outgrown that era. And so that's a discussion that I will be having not only with you all here when talking about the impacts of this technology to our agency, but also what then is as a consequence to keeping up with this day and age, what we may need to support all of this stuff. That's becoming best practice and things that we do want to implement and have. So long-winded answer to your question, Mark. We already do it now, but I'm not sure how long that's going to be sustainable as we continue to have open records requests and the need to properly secure this storage. So that's another thing too, storage space.
That's huge.
Sounds, the person I'm referring to is the other twin tower in CIU, Lou Gebler. So if you ever have questions, Lou, I'm sure would be able to tell you, because it was a little bit bigger department than Monona, but still, I've heard a lot of stories about how much it grew on him. I don't think they realized as time went on how big of a job it was. And you got to do it right. I mean, it's video. You can't.
You do. For anybody.
Shortcuts.
You're right, Mark. And we will be, scrutinized, federally sued, et cetera, if we mess this one up. And so that's why it's so important. And I'll give again kudos to Assistant Chief Duman. She does a really good job at it. But one of the things, if you've been following along with Madison, the City of Madison Police Department's body worn camera proposal that they've had, and that they're going to be implementing the sort of a pilot program. They asked for that was a person in addition to the equipment, because they need a person to manage all of that. That's a lot of footage, a lot of people, a lot of open records requests. And that's obviously the second largest city in the state, and I get that, but you also have agencies like Sun Prairie, Fitchburg, who delegate this responsibility to another person as well, who manages all of that. So we, many of you may or may not know, we contract our IT services out. So we don't have somebody here that's full-time. I think they do a good job when they're here, but there's several things that have to wait until they come back. And so I'm not saying that they're underperforming, but I think that we're a growing city with these bigger demands that, frankly, my humble opinion as a non-policy maker, as somebody who doesn't control the budget, we could demand a full-time IT person here.
So if I've
Not
missed this,
overstepping, I hope.
if I've missed this in the policy, just be kind. But so just in records retention, if you have a felony case, you could end up having to store this thing for a body camera for 75 years, right?
Correct.
So the 120 days is no less than 120 days.
Right, that's our minimum retention.
Minimum retention. So what would be a situation where 121 days goes by and you get rid of it?
It's something that's not captured as evidence, right? So say, for example.
So the DA decides not to prosecute, there's no discovery, it's unneeded, it's never requested.
It's nothing of a criminal matter in which that's gonna be pursued or, that either the police department didn't deem it as evidence, or it's something that, the public doesn't have an interest in, for example, that, because our cameras, they're on a constant loop, so they're always recording, so that when you hit the button to actually hit record, or it's activated, as we'll go into here soon, and with the squad video, it's capturing the 30 seconds prior to you hitting the button, prior to the emergency lights going on. That's a lot of data.
The
And-
size of these files is tremendous, and the cost of storage is not insignificant.
Right,
It's a
and
big
so
deal.
we currently have hardware that stores it in a secure
Mhm.
server, but a lot of agencies are looking to cloud space, and
Right.
cloud space costs money, and you're not in control of that those increases that happen year to year, unless you lock into certain contract terms. But outside of that, you're at the mercy of whatever increases that the cloud storage company issues you. Sarah, am I missing anything there that you want to add about retention?
No, that you pretty much covered it, but I will say that even though 120 days is our minimum limit, we actually have our minimum at 180.
Be safe.
Just to give us that little extra buffer, so that if we do have something requested beyond that point in time, then we've got a better chance of having it.
And then, thank you, Sarah, that Chief Dubin, that's a really good point. So thanks for bringing it up. I will say, for those who aren't familiar with sort of why, or the process of us, with our records retention, our records retention is sort of has to be approved by the state. So our policy, when we retain our records, is something that's governed by a state records retention board, and they meet, I think, 4 times a year, and we have to get on the approval for. So if we want to change this, it's not something that we unilaterally as a city can do. It's something that the state has to give approval for, and that's per statute.
Yeah. And then to Mark's concern about the time, I would want to amplify that. My experience would say that that's absolutely true. If the size of these files, like I said, they're tremendous, and if this agency has a request to transfer a file to, the Dane County DA's office, for example, it could take 20 hours, to transfer some of these files electronically. Or if you're still in the habit of burning a disk and delivering it, then there's just the time to burn a disk, the time to transport it. It's a big deal, just because we now live in a world where now we have to deal with all these massive files, which we didn't have to before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, any other questions? If not, a motion to recommend approval to the council would be in order.
Move to.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Do that to you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move on to the next policy.
Very similar, very much related. I wanted to give you again the background as to why, entire sections were struck, because there was overlap. One of the things that, as I mentioned before, we currently, as a policy, give an option of officers to check out and carry not check out because it's assigned to the squad, the microphone associated with the in-car video, right? I think we have 1 officer, maybe 2 that decide to do that. Again, it's another piece of equipment that they're responsible for. They have to wear it on, and I think you've seen our officers now where they're running out of space because of all the things that they have on their uniform. And just as a caveat to that, just real briefly, the reason they're wearing it on their chest is because they don't want to be like the chief or Assistant Chief Duman or Lieutenant Weigel, where they now have back problems because the standard for years was that you wore it around your waist. Nothing was up here.
Oh.
And the professionals, the medical doctors, the insurance folks who would have to deal with these claims have found that it's better for load bearing that you wear it higher up on a load bearing vest. So we address some of these issues with us looking very militarized, but there's a function and purpose behind why we're starting to wear things on our chest as load bearing versus our hips, which impact our back, our hips, etc. But that piece of equipment, that microphone, is yet another item that they would have to strap onto them. And it is, in my opinion, overly redundant, and not a lot of agencies require that because we have the body worn camera that captures audio and video.
And did you say that some agencies just have one or the other, whereas Monona has both?
Right, perfect example, up until they get the pilot program up and running, Madison Police, they only have their in-car video.
Any questions, comments?
It's nice to see the editing comments. That's nice.
Yeah, some of it's funky because it like a word is missing of what was struck, and I again, it's technical glitch that is with the program.
I just have one minor thing. I think it was just missed here because we're calling it the MAV administrator on 421.5. In that second paragraph, it still refers to the MAV technician.
Thanks for catching that. Thank you. I got it right in
I
front of
think
me.
you explained this already because I was going to ask you who the forensic media staff was. But if I understood you correctly, you farm that out. So you do have, it's not somebody from the county or somebody like that that's doing that stuff. That's a civilian organization or something like that that does your forensic work.
So in terms of like a major crime, is that what you're talking about, Mark? in
Well, no,
which we
I
have
was
to
just
do-
wondering what the forensic media staff was. It sounds like there's two different things. If you'd have some video evidence of a crime, I would assume that would be handled forensically, maybe through the county. But then your day-to-day stuff with these discs and things like that, do you have someone else handling that? So it's two different
Sure.
forensic.
On a day-to-day basis where we don't have in homes, right, homicide or something is significant, day-to-day basis, your domestic incident, which you captured something on your video, you need that uploaded and downloaded. That is the officer that does that. That is Assistant Chief Duman who verifies that it's been captured. There's a couple of people who have access to referring all of that information and evidence through the district attorney's program, in which they send, Mark, they send everything up. That's all in-house. Anything bigger than that that needs to be explored or digitally analyzed or collected, it's likely a DOJ request. So we're calling the state, the crime response people to come out. Mark, we're from a bigger agency where we had our own folks trained and equipped to do that, but we are not here in Monona, and so we rely on DOJ.
Okay.
Does that answer that? But the day-to-day stuff is as the administrator, person who makes sure that it gets transferred from A to B, or if there are technical glitches to troubleshoot, to navigate all that and work with our contracted IT person if we need to. If there's a server issue, it's not backing up to X, Y, and Z. That is Assistant Chief Sarah Duman.
So
Okay.
Mark, are you referring to the occasional need to capture a 30-second piece of a video for a bit of evidence? Is that what when you talk about forensics, you mean like digging in and really studying?
Well, yeah, and that's what I was just kind of curious when it said forensic media staff, because I know there's different pieces like that. And I think Chief he explained that to me now, how that all, because you have an IT person, you have an administrator, and then you have DOJ. So you actually have three different ways, depending upon what you're doing, you go in. And that's what makes sense to me.
But you also raise a good point in some of the terminology that's in this Lexipol policy. And we asked that too of our Lexipol rep, because we tried to shrink a lot of that down, and she cautioned us and said, I've seen this before where you try to shrink it down and then you gain that person. And now you have to then go back and try to figure out, well, what is this called, or what do we create? If we eliminate a section, it's gone. We don't get any updates, nothing from Lexipol. So she recommended we keep the language in there, we tweak it, and that there's an understanding that yes, this unit might not exist, but somebody ultimately has that responsibility. So the unit or the administrator or the whatever mission of that role is, we just so happen to have one person that does it, and it's our assistant chief. So the terminology reflects that it's some specialized team or unit, and that's just left in there for potential growth.
All right, thank you.
Wishful thinking.
So speaking of not wanting to remove things, I do just have a general
Yes.
question about section 421.41, which was entirely removed, and I don't need details, but just in general, what was the rationale behind why it wasn't needed?
So that language is in there, and then that's something that we thought was, you know, if it's not intended to describe every possible situation, and then you try to outline the possible situations, we had a discussion too about that. It's like, why is it in there then? If you're not trying to, and it's not state law, it's not having anything to do with our, you know, records policy, then why is it in there? And so, and we also thought that there were some things that were, again, redundant with how we, you know, our other policies that are in place on, you know, when you need to collect evidence and when you need to activate your body worn camera, et cetera. So that, I mean, it's worth a discussion. I'm happy to have that discussion, but once you start listing things, even though you say that it's not an all-inclusive list.
That's because somebody will then say, but it wasn't listed.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll catch every time.
It sounds like maybe something that other agencies would also have decided to strike.
Yes, we're not the
That
only
lexical
ones.
might just say, let's get rid of this.
And I don't have it in front of me, but I do have access to, you know, when it lists something such as best practice, Lexipol does allow me, and Lieutenant Weagle's on this too, give us access to the language sometimes. Sometimes it's not always indicated as to why it's best practice or why it's recommended. This in particular one, I don't recall there being anything, not to say that it wasn't, I just don't recall there being anything, which led us also to want to strike all of this. Where if there were a sort of a resounding, oh, aha, that's why they've added it, I think I would have been more likely wanting to leave things in than to remove it. I don't, you'll see this moving forward. I don't like, unless required by statute or case law, I don't like itemizing things because it seems very limiting and this job is not black and white.
And it'll get you in court every time.
100%. And I'm okay with a legal challenge, right? Because we all need to grow as a profession. I just hope it's not
Don't
the
create
police
your own.
department.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, a motion to recommend approval to the council is in order.
Motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 7, discussion of future agenda items. As always, if there's anything that any of the committee members want put on the agenda, we don't always guarantee that will be put on, but it most likely will, and you should bring it to the chief. For appropriateness, we will continue to discuss policy as we update the policies.
May I ask a favor? Can you talk in terms of general sense, because I have received a couple of inquiries separate from this one regarding signage. That's probably best appropriate for public works when it comes to signage, street road signage.
Well, by law, Public Works is responsible for signage, but because some people consider them safety in the past, Public Works has asked for recommendation from someone contacted the chief about they want to limit this parking on the street, and the chief asked public safety to take a look at it. And that's very common, as in the past has been very common. We are not the determining body, rather we are making a recommendation from a public safety perspective to Public Works, and because they want something to sometimes to hang their hat on.
Perfect, thank you.
That
That's great, because I have received, you know, requests for this body to take up, but when they describe it, I've not deemed it as something that the police are concerned about. Fire hasn't deemed it as something that the fire is concerned about. And it seems as if one sign at one part of a block is something more for,
Well, it.
this is different than.
It depends on the rationale for wanting it. And if it's a question of, so safety vehicles can get in there because their little kids can't safely
makes
cross the street. If it's a safety issue, they will ask us for our recommendation because it gives them, then if people complain, why did you do this? It gives them greater rationale to do it.
Yeah, I guess thank you, Elder. I'm referring to residents contacting staff directly, not asking. a member.
Signage is the purview of the Public Works Committee
Thank you.
by state law. Okay, anything else on future agenda items? If not, we'll move to item 8, updates discussion on DEI initiatives. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to thank everyone for your support, your feedback, your presence, some of you to the Juneteenth celebration that was held last Friday. Staff had a chance to discuss sort of what that would look like in future years. I think that there's been consensus and direction actually from the mayor that the city will continue to have recognition of that in some version. But we also don't necessarily want to overshadow some of the larger events, countywide events or state events that are happening. So we'll look for opportunities so that those don't conflict, which Saturday or Fridays did not. And it was a shorter 30-minute ceremony. I think that was appropriate and very symbolic and meaningful in my opinion. But that we'd also want to encourage, advertise for folks to show up to Park Street for the parade or to Penn Park, or to really partake in some of the larger scale initiatives to recognize and celebrate Juneteenth.
Hey, have they thought about, I mean, I think about the first place to start with any of this stuff is with kids. And if the library could do something for the kids.
Our library director has reaffirmed his commitment to sort of growing on the Juneteenth celebration and involving the library more.
And doing and doing it for the kid. I mean, I just think doing it for the kids is a really good thing to do. I mean, you gotta start
Early.
I agree. That's just my view of the world. Anybody else have thoughts, suggestions, comments?
I sent my thoughts to work with the committee in Madison to get on, since it's so publicized and they had in-person and virtual events. If Monona could get on board with that, that could be a win-win.
I think thank you, Angela, and that's great. I think we were one of 5 or 6 published events that was happening in the community in Dane County, which says a lot, I think, about some of the work that this community is trying to do. But I agree with you. I don't want to necessarily take away from these, often like the Juneteenth Madison event that's been standing for some time and has more exhibits and more information, more learning opportunities for folks to partake in. So I agree with you that we should recognize it on our end, my opinion as staff here, but also encourage others to partake in these larger events.
And I think they would be open to that because it opens it up to a new audience. So I think it could be a nice collaboration.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Not, we'll move to reports. Chief, you have a report?
Just briefly, in case you missed it, the part-time officer position was approved by council with with the amendment to the budget to move some financing around to support that. I'm going to reach out to the Police and Fire Commission president soon to talk about the expectations of the PFC and some of the criteria needed to fill those roles. But also in terms of bringing on new folks, we have 2 retirement eligible officers who are currently here. They've not given notice, nor am I asking them of that, and they're great officers, and I hope they stay with us as long as they're willing to. But there is an opportunity for them to retire today. In anticipating that, I think my direction to staff this morning was that we are going to start recruiting. And then I'm told that the PFC has previously held sort of an eligibility list open. So the goal is to start recruiting now and early and as often as we can and in various spaces as we can to get folks to apply. I think what I'll do, unless told otherwise by the mayor or others, is that I will keep it open with respect to experience, because we have 2 brand new officers now who had 0 law enforcement experience who are contributing a lot to this community and to this department that we sponsored through an academy. And so I think I really want to keep it as sort of a case by case. If the opportunity presents itself in which we can provide somebody sponsorship through the police academy and the timing's right, it's not going to significantly impact staffing because of family leave here or military leave there, et cetera. I want to keep the window open and the opportunity open. We had a lot of success with our last 2 officers. I can say publicly that I'm leaning heavily on returning back to Black Hawk Technical College. Our most recent officer, her experience there was rave reviews. I felt more supportive by the staff there, and updates, regular updates, and information sharing. Not to say that that won't happen at Madison College should we return, but in the interim, I think that where I'd like us to spend our money is Black Hawk down the street, with the understanding that Madison College is still a good viable option for us. And so that's the part-time officers, and I wanted to give you the update on what we're doing for recruitment as well, as I just established earlier today. Let's see, the Chief McMillan and I are working on our capital budgets. We got our marching orders from the mayor and the finance manager on that about a week or so ago, and so we're putting all that together. And as we did last year, we hope to bring that to you for the July meeting. So expect that as to be a future items to discuss both the police, which includes the dispatch center and fire departments. And Jerry and I like to go at our capital budget as a collective, as a public safety team. So as we think about public safety in terms of how we best can utilize the items that we're asking for as far as our 5-year capital budget plan, with also the understanding that times are tough still, and we don't have an infinite number of money for all of you residents here. I can appreciate that as well.
And we have a public safety building to build.
And we have a building to build. Yes. So we are keeping that in mind. And as Jerry has mentioned, reaching out to these various opportunities to obtain grants and funding. So am I. The fire department gets a little bit more spoiled than we do in law enforcement, but there are opportunities out there. Still waiting on word from a grant from the foundation at Walmart, but also there's state funding that's coming our way. Each municipality that has a police department was awarded funding. I think they call it a public safety funds. I'm not sure the term the governor ended up using for that, but each municipality with the police department was allocated funding, and there was a weird formula that was used with respect to the size of the population, or population size, the calls for service, the crime. I don't know, some statistician was in the room and made it fair and equitable based on those. Yes.
I was just going to ask you, have you met Lisa B. Nelson?
No.
Okay. She used to be on the council here. She is the regional rep for Walmart and gives out the big funds and comes to, she lives up in northern Wisconsin. I will arrange.
Okay.
I will arrange coffee or something for You meet her, you know,
No, that'd be great, at least to get to know, some
she
folks
gives
around
out
there.
their big bucks.
Okay, well, I applied in February for $6,000 to support something, and I've not yet heard back from the foundation, so that might be good to just follow up with. To do anything more than a quick
I'll
follow-up.
contact her and tell her
See.
you'd like to have coffee with her.
Yay or nay, because if it's nay, then I'm moving on to Jimmy John's or something like that, so.
Okay.
So this police department received roughly $18,500 from the state. Just to give you an example, I think Stoughton received more than that. They surely don't go to nearly as many calls as we do. So again, I'm not sure what formula this was, but we have already sort of identified needs for that 18,500. One of the things that we're looking to do is buy the equipment that fits under the authorized purchases, because of course the state's not just going to cut you a check and not give restrictions. So there's select categories and things that we can purchase. We can use the funding for purchase, and there's several things that we can't. One of the things that we were really looking to do with police and fire was to acquire unmanned aerial systems, AKA drones, right? We have a lot of, I think I've talked about this and with this committee, we have a
How
lot
much do
of
they cost?
persons, $9,000 between the batteries and the hardware. They're not cheap. But I think we found a way to
Festival committee.
yes, so that's been committed, well, not committed, that's been talked about with the festival committee. But we also have already paid for an officer to take his certification, in which he now, because you need a like pilot's license to do this, not a commercial pilot's license, but you need a license from the FAA to do this. And so the officer took the time to go through a week-long training, successfully went through that course and successfully passed his very mathematical and weather-related tests, which I would fail miserably because that's not my skill set, but he passed. So that happened some time ago, and now we sit without a mechanism in which he can practice what he's passed for. So we need something here. And so my thought is and the mayor's already been involved in these discussions to sort of utilize some of these state funds for other purchase needs that we have, and then sort of identify other sources. So, thank you. And so outside of that, I can tell you that we're doing okay here in the PD. The officers are still responding to a lot of calls. The weather-related incident, I was extremely impressed by the officers who, we were so busy, they took it upon themselves to just check to make sure it's okay to come in, and then they came in to help out. We had so many officers here that we didn't have enough squads for everyone. So we commandeered non-police vehicles from City Hall in order to respond out. This hit us pretty hard. I do have video of this from city cameras that captured it coming over Lake Monona, and you would have thought it was an F2 tornado by watching some of this video. And Sarah, Kurt, and I were actually, I think all three of us were here. Some of us, yeah, we all were here. Kurt may have been not, lucky him, watching this come in, and then the immediate impact. So our dispatchers, as you can imagine, and Sarah was fortunately here to help. The phones lines were off the hook, ringing and ringing and ringing. We have officers on the streets calling things in. We have houses that appear to be significant and are significantly damaged due to, tree fall. Live wires every other major intersection. We have a major intersection at Monona and Nichols that was completely without power during rush hour. So as you can imagine, and the officers, as Jerry mentioned, did phenomenally. The fire staff showed up in mass, did phenomenally. Public Works in mass did a great job. Our city staff controlling the messaging, putting out alerts. As somebody who came from a larger agency and dealt with, significant events, significant power outages, protests, I'd like to say I've seen a few things in my time at NPD. I was extremely impressed by how this small Monona handled such a significant event with very few resources. Thank you also to McFarland Police Department, who did show up to assist, giving some traffic direction or standing by a live wire. We had a lot of live wires down. As Alder Rademacher mentioned, she saw me because I was just going around telling everyone, hey, here's what's happening, we're aware, we're looking and identifying any injuries first, people first, and property second. And that was great. I will say that, as Jerry mentioned, how proud he is to work here. I too am very proud to work here, and I don't know if I ever receive as many thank yous. We don't do it for the thank yous, but we appreciate them. But the kindness in offering me water, offering me a bathroom to use, and all of our officers received the same kindness when they were out there, because some of us were stuck blocking traffic for some time with no relief. And so for the community to step up, not only for us, but as Jerry mentioned, to look out for each other as neighbors, as I saw, on Rademacher, and I know we've heard stories here of you all doing that. It's really, really wonderful. And I think that that's what makes, in part, Monona so special.
What also was interesting is we didn't have we had an acting administrator.
That's
So,
another good point.
so the emergency government stuff that normally is in place, I mean, so it just speaks to how good our department heads are, and how well things are.
I agree. And that's my report. Thank you.
I was also really proud to see, just a more of a lighter note. I was really proud to participate in the Lake the Loop bicycle event. What was it, Saturday?
Saturday morning, yeah.
And as we were coming through Monona, there were two officers standing right across from the bait shop, handing out water and refreshments
Watermelon.
in full gear. And there was such a crowd of people around the table. And I just said, hey, that's us. It was just wonderful. People from all over just riding right past that very highly visible spot. It was great. It was just really nice to see them there.
Thanks for bringing that up, Alder. Here's what's especially cool about that. That was the officers' idea themselves.
Oh, wow. They picked a great
And so,
location.
great location and great day. The weather was
Super,
great.
yeah.
We'll see how much they do it in the winter. But no, I instituted this mandatory community outreach that I required quarterly. Our staff has been going above and beyond that, and they're being really creative as to what community engagement means and what they can do and do more. And that includes our dispatcher. We got one of our dispatchers who works a night shift after an overtime shift that came back with her young little puppy, which everyone was drawn to, of course, and spent some time engaging with the community there. So that speaks to the staff you have here at the PD and how caring and thoughtful they are, and really their desire to want to meet, interact, and give back. And it's not just the wonderful bicycle people. We're doing it for a great cause. I mean, we're trying to get into, areas in which people who may not feel as comfortable approaching and talking to us as well, based on, very valid reasons and trauma from generational trauma that's existed. So we're also thinking in terms of that. I'm also looking for more opportunities to make sure our staff has those avenues in which to do that type of engagement as well. So I just left the meeting with the law enforcement and leaders of color. So that's a group coordinated by the NAACP of Dane County, as well as the United Way. I've been part of this group for 4 years as a police commander, now as chief, but prior to that as my role at MPD. And we really look at ways to sort of bridge the divide, so to speak. And we have really robust, sometimes challenging discussions in that room. But I think it's helpful because you have real talk, right, in those spaces, and you're able to talk about what we can do as police, because it's we're hired and this is a chosen profession, and so we have to work at it. But also what the community needs to do to help bridge that divide as well. And so any opportunities, as there were some that were brought up and is facilitated by United Way and NAACP to help identify events or spaces in which we can do that community engagement. I'm asking all of you as well to please send them my way. If
So
you hear
we-
something, doesn't have to be Monona.
We're doing the senior concert. So if you or any of your officers, let me know, and I will make sure that they introduce them and have a chance to.
Perfect. Some are more shy than others when it comes to public speaking. But I will be
But
there
you're
with
but you're not
them.
among them, are you?
I will be there with them to model the behavior and show them that it's not so bad.
So I think the first one's July 17th.
Yes,
It's the 17th, it's the last two Tuesdays and then the first two Tuesdays in August.
in August. One of them on the 9th or the 6th, I believe it is a Tuesday in August. I think I got that right. If not the 9th, coincides with our national night
Yeah,
out
yeah.
that we're having.
Yeah.
Just to give you an early heads up, and some of you in the room might know this or virtual room, but we sort of reformatted this year what National Night Out looks like. It's in the works right now, involving our wonderful leadership intern Maya, who if you've not had a chance to meet her, hopefully she'll be a future cop here. That's what we're working on. But Maya helped organize our Juneteenth event, was really instrumental. She even brought lemonade and cookies, and nobody asked her to do that, and showed up to make sure people on a hot day had the supplies there for them. But anyways, Maya is helping our community relations officer, Officer Flora, and coordinating our national night out. So it's more welcoming and inviting, and it's more like a neighborhood block party versus look at all our shiny big stuff that we got, and some of that can be scary. So we're going to involve all of our departments and making sure that they feel like they have a role in engagement. Yes, it is about public safety and the public safety team, but this is also Team Monona, and we want to make sure that all feel welcome to partake.
What time does that start?
Oh, Angela.
Okay, that's okay.
4 o'clock, is it, Kurt? When is it usually, or Sarah? 4, 3, 4, the National Night Out?
And when is,
Typically, it's been 5.
Yes.
Thank you.
what's the date on
Thank
that,
you.
Brian? July?
August
Oh,
9th.
sorry.
Whatever
August
that Tuesday is that in August. Here, let me look.
9th. I could look at this, so.
You sent a meeting request, put it on people's calendar.
You know what, I'm a calendar invite person, so yes, I will likely do that. August 9th. There is a rain date, I think, on the 16th, because we still want to have it. So if it rains on
Oh,
August
that's
9th, it'll
election
be on the
day.
16th. Is the 16th is?
No, August 9th.
Oh, the 9th is. So you're right by City Hall anyway, so come over to National Night
But
Out.
you has to work.
Oh, you're
I'll be
whole,
there.
you're,
Mhm.
oh, okay, thank you for your
I'll
service.
be done by, well, we'll see. I don't know what time yet. I'll be there.
So. Okay,
Awesome.
you're
That's all I
done.
have, yeah.
Police and Fire Commission, Joe.
We had our annual meeting a couple of weeks ago. I have been reappointed as the public safety representative, so you're stuck with me for another year. Sorry about that. We had a discussion with both of the chiefs, nothing that's going to be too unfamiliar to this committee. We talked about the part-time officer issue for a while that can wrap up to the further work PFC will be doing later. No other meetings planned right now, although it sounds like we may be leading up to one. And the other note is that Jeff Simmons did confirm he was leaving the commission at that meeting, so there is a vacancy. I don't know if you folks know more about the appointment process, but that is an open issue right now as well.
Okay. Any questions about any of the reports? If not, we'll move to item 10, next meeting date, July 27th. We'll move to item 11, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all. See you the 27th. Connie, behave yourself.
Need something